Hi there, and Happy New Year. Happy 2016. This is the year of the counter-revolution. Now you're wondering, you're thinking, well, Bernie Sanders says that this is the year of the revolution. And I'm saying it's the year of the counter-revolution. Because actually, if you really want to see a revolution in this country, the revolution happened 35 years ago. Before 1980, we all believed in the American dream. And then along came the revolution. And the revolution, my friends, was Ronnie Rodeo's reactionary Republican revolution. I'll talk about that later. First, I want to talk about the American dream, because the revolution is what stopped the American dream, and now we got to get the American dream going again. I will bet you have all heard about the American dream. Everybody talks about the American dream, but most of us aren't real sure what that is. So I want to go back a few years to when we started this country. Now, you all have heard of Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson said, all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these, he said, among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He didn't say the only ones are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is not a complete list. It's just a starting point, my friends. And that's the way the country started. And this was the first nation in human history that was built on those principles, as opposed to built on the principle of some king or some general manages to kill off all his opponents and therefore gets to be in charge. Whole different kind of an idea. And that was 250 years ago. And we started with a few kind of basic rights belonging only to free male citizens. So women weren't included, slaves weren't included, and to start off with, you only had those three rights. But soon we started adding on to those rights. Another right we added on was government can't lock you up without a reason. And another one was government can't tell you what religion to practice, or even to practice any religion if you don't want to. And another one, government can't take your goods without any reason. And another one was citizens can own guns. And these rights didn't just apply to rich landowners. These rights applied to all free white men. So it's a starting point. It's a starting point of rights, and it's a starting point of the number of people who have those rights. Now, most people who were free and white, even if they weren't rich, could start a small farm, start a small business, might have a chance to become rich sometime in the future. All right. That's the starting point. Let's fast forward a little. 407 years later, after Thomas Jefferson, we extended those rights to former slaves. No women, just men, but former slaves now had all those rights. And in addition, we started figuring, adding a little bit to the rights. Everybody should get a basic education. all people should be able to marry whoever they wanted to, within some limitations, but maybe later on the limitations get a little less. And a whole lot of other stuff. And those small farms and small businesses started growing. And this we started calling the middle class, or if you will, pursuit of happiness. Because after all, if you can really accomplish something in life, if you can make your life better than it was for your parents, well, that's pursuing happiness in a way. And that whole thing of having a better life for your children than you had, and having a better life yourself than your parents had. Well, this is all part of what we call the American dream. But it is important to note that at this time, it was for men only. So now let's move up a little more. 95 years ago today, or right about then, women got some of those rights. And meanwhile, the rights started to expand even more. And so did the middle class. You see, the American dream keeps growing. There keep being more rights, and more people have those rights. And the middle class grows so that there's fewer poor people. And guess what? There's still almost as many or even growing number of rich people. But the important thing is people in the middle who have all those rights and have the opportunity to make their lives better than their parents' lives. That number of people keeps growing. And that's what we call the American dream. So let's move up again. About 40 years after that, we realized that not everyone was getting an equal chance. Former slaves and other African Americans actually had slid back. They were not doing even as well as they had back when they first got the rights. And poor people of all colors were slipping back a little. That wasn't good. And women were still restricted in a whole lot of ways. So we rededicated ourselves to the unfinished work of the American dream. We kind of pulled it back and got it going again. And this was in the 1960s and the 1970s. And during that period of time, in the 1960s and the 1970s, we had more rights for more people. We expanded the American dream a whole lot. We included a right to a place to live, and a right to a job, and a right to have as much education as you can use in order to be the best person you can be, in order to reach that American dream, in order to make your life to be better than your parents' lives, in order to build a platform for your children's lives to be better than yours. And we added a kind of coverall, the right to be treated equally. And we did all that in the 1960s and the 1970s, and the American dream surged forward, and more people were covered under it, and there were more rights, and the middle class expanded, and there were still rich people, but there were fewer and fewer poor people. Pretty good deal. And then it all came to a screeching halt. Because along came Ronnie Rodeo's radical reactionary Republican revolution. And Ronnie Rodeo said that he would make America better. He said he'd make things a whole lot better, and he made things a whole lot worse. Because, you see, Ronnie Rodeo was a secret agent for the rich people. And he started a process where there became fewer rights for fewer people. And rich people started getting richer. And poor people started getting poorer. And that middle class started shrinking. And this whole process that Ronnie Rodeo started has continued for 35 years. We've had Republican governments, and we've had Democrat governments, and we've had a whole lot of different laws and lots of different changes in our society. And the bottom line, through all of that time since Ronnie Rodeo, has been a shrinking middle class, and the rich are getting rich, and the poor are getting poorer. And public education costs too much, and jobs don't pay enough. And there's very little chance of rising in society. You know, where are those small farms and small businesses? Well, they're all soaked up by rich people and corporations. And instead of growing, the number of people with rights are shrinking. And women have less rights today than they did before Ronnie Rodeo came in. And African Americans have less rights today than they had when Ronnie Rodeo came in. And the net result has been a reversal of that American dream. And friends, it's time to put a stop to Ronnie Rodeo's radical reactionary Republican revolution. And so this is the counter-revolution. Not a revolution, but a counter-revolution. Not a new thing. Bernie Sanders calls this socialism, and he says it's all new. It's not new. It's getting back to the American dream.